Jake Morrison looked at the official letter for the third time. The words still seemed strange to him. Assignment: Carolus Prime Colony. Duration: 6 months. Objective: teach basic survival skills to alien colonists. He folded the paper and put it in his jacket pocket. The transport ship hummed quietly as it moved through space. Jake sat in his small cabin, looking out at the stars. He had never been this far from Earth before. Montana seemed like a different world now. Even though he missed the mountains and forests, already Dock Captain Lisa Parker had briefed him before the trip. The Carolites are peaceful people, she had said. They have advanced technology and live in harmony with their planet. This is just a cultural exchange program. You teach them some basic survival skills. They show you their way of life. Jake touched the knife on his belt. It was his grandfather's knife, worn smooth from years of use. He wondered if the aliens would understand why he carried it. Most humans these days did not even know how to use a knife properly. The ship's computer announced their arrival at Carolus Prime. Jake gathered his gear and headed to the docking bay. His backpack contained everything he thought he might need: fire starters, rope, water purification tablets, fishing line, and a few other basic tools. It all seemed very simple compared to the ship's advanced systems. The docking bay doors opened with a soft whoosh. Jake stepped onto the alien colony for the first time. The air was clean and warm, with a slight sweet smell he could not identify. The sky was pale blue, almost white, with 2 small suns shining down. 3 aliens waited for him. They were tall and thin, with smooth gray skin and large dark eyes. Their faces were kind, but Jake could see they were studying him carefully. The tallest one stepped forward. "Welcome to Carolus Prime," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Zeth Prime, administrator of this colony. These are my assistants, Yura7 and Veshtek." Jake nodded and extended his hand. "I'm Jake Morrison. Thank you for having me." Zeth Prime looked at Jake's hand with curiosity, then carefully shook it. The alien's skin was cool and dry. "This is a human greeting custom, yes? We have studied your people, but meeting one in person is very different." They walked through the colony, and Jake tried not to stare. Everything was clean and perfect. The buildings were smooth and white, with no sharp edges. Gardens grew in neat rows, tended by small floating robots. The walkways were soft under his feet, and the air was always the perfect temperature. "Your home is very beautiful," Jake said. "Thank you," Yura7 replied. She was smaller than the others, with brighter eyes. "We have lived here for many generations. Our ancestors designed this place to be perfect for us." Jake noticed that all the Carolites looked healthy and clean. Their clothes were simple but well made. No one seemed to be in a hurry. It was like walking through a peaceful dream. "Where will I be teaching?" Jake asked. "We have prepared a special area," Veshtek said. "It is outside the main colony, where you can demonstrate your survival techniques safely." They reached a large dome building. Inside, Jake saw his quarters. The room was comfortable, with a bed, desk, and viewing screen. Everything was spotless and new. "Will this be acceptable?" Zeth Prime asked. "It's perfect," Jake said. "Much better than camping in the woods." The aliens looked confused. "Camping?" Yura7 asked. "Sleeping outside in the wilderness," Jake explained. "In tents or under the stars. But why would someone do that?" Veshtek asked. "It sounds dangerous and uncomfortable." Jake realized then how different their worlds were. Sometimes people have to survive in the wilderness. Sometimes they want to, for fun or to learn about themselves. The aliens exchanged glances. Jake could see they found this concept very strange. "Tomorrow we will begin your lessons," Zeth Prime said. 23 of our people have volunteered to learn about human survival methods. They are very excited to meet you." After the aliens left, Jake sat on his bed and looked around the room. Everything worked perfectly. The lights came on when he needed them. The temperature was always comfortable. Food appeared when he pressed a button. He wondered what these people could possibly learn from him. That night, Jake dreamed of home. He was back in the Montana wilderness, sitting by a campfire he had made with his own hands. The fire crackled and sent sparks into the dark sky. He could hear wolves howling in the distance, and he was not afraid. He was home. He woke up in the perfect alien room and felt strange. The walls were too smooth, the air too clean. There were no sounds of wind or animals. It was like being inside a machine. Jake got dressed and went to the window. The colony was already awake, with Carolites walking calmly to their daily tasks. Floating robots cleaned the walkways. Everything was organized and peaceful. He touched his grandfather's knife again. In a few hours, he would meet his students. He would try to teach them about fire, shelter, and finding food in the wild. He wondered if they would understand why these things mattered. Jake had no idea that his simple lessons would change everything. He did not know that the peaceful Carolites had forgotten something important about themselves. He was just a man from Montana, sent to teach basic survival skills to aliens who thought they did not need them. But sometimes the most important lessons are the ones we think we do not need to learn. Jake stood in the open area outside the colony dome, waiting for his first students. The morning air was cool, and he could see strange purple plants growing in the distance. His backpack lay open on the ground, showing his simple tools to anyone who wanted to look. 23 Carolites approached him. They moved quietly, their large eyes fixed on Jake with curiosity. Yura 7 was among them, and she smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, Teacher Jake," she said. "We are ready to learn about human survival." Jake looked at the group. They all wore clean, simple clothes. Their hands were soft and unmarked. None of them carried any tools or equipment. They looked like people who had never faced real hardship. "Okay," Jake said. "Let's start with something basic: fire." He knelt down and gathered some dry grass and small sticks. The aliens watched him with interest. Jake took out his flint and steel, 2 simple pieces of metal that his grandfather had taught him to use. "Fire is one of the most important things for survival," Jake explained. "It gives you warmth, light, and a way to cook food. It also keeps dangerous animals away." "But we have thermal regulators," one alien said, "and light panels, and food processors. What if they break?" Jake asked. The aliens looked confused. "They do not break," Yura 7 said. "Our technology is very reliable." Jake struck the flint against the steel. Sparks flew into the dry grass. He blew gently, and the grass began to smoke. The aliens stepped back in surprise. "It is making fire without power." One of them whispered. Jake added small sticks to the growing flame. Soon he had a good fire burning. The aliens stared at it like it was magic. "How did you do that?" Yura 7 asked. Jake showed them the flint and steel. "These are just rocks and metal. No power source needed. Humans have been making fire this way for thousands of years." He spent the next hour teaching them about fire. Most of the aliens could not make sparks at all. Their hands were too soft, and they were afraid of the sharp edges. When one finally made a small flame, the whole group cheered. "Now let's talk about shelter," Jake said. He led them to an area with trees and bushes. "If you are lost in the wilderness, you need protection from weather and animals. You build shelter from whatever you can find." Jake began breaking branches and gathering leaves. The aliens watched him work with his hands, bending and shaping the natural materials. His hands were scarred and calloused, built for this kind of work. You are damaging the plants, Veshtek said, sounding worried. I'm only taking what I need, Jake replied. The plants will grow back. This concept seemed to upset several aliens. They had lived in harmony with their environment for so long that the idea of using plants for survival felt wrong to them. Jake built a simple lean-to shelter. It was not perfect, but it would keep rain out and provide windbreak. This would keep you alive in bad weather, he said. But it looks so rough, one alien said. It doesn't have to be pretty, Jake replied. It just has to work. Next, Jake taught them about finding water. He showed them how to collect dew from leaves, how to find streams, and how to make a simple filter from sand and cloth. Why would water be unsafe? Yira 7 asked. Jake pulled out his water purification tablets. In the wilderness, water might have bacteria or other things that make you sick. These tablets kill the bad stuff. The aliens had never considered that water could be dangerous. In their colony, pure water flowed from every tap. The idea that they might need to clean water themselves was completely new. Let me show you something else, Jake said. He took out his fishing line and hooks. This is how humans catch fish for food. You eat animals? One alien asked, sounding shocked. Sometimes, Jake said, when there's no other food available, or when you need protein to stay healthy. The vegetarian aliens looked uncomfortable. Jake realized he had touched on something important in their culture. I'm not asking you to eat meat, he said quickly, but humans are omnivores. We can eat both plants and animals. It helped us survive in many different environments. He showed them how to tie knots, how to make traps from simple materials, and how to identify edible plants. With each lesson, the aliens became more amazed. Humans can survive with almost nothing, Yira 7 said. Just simple tools and knowledge. That's right, Jake replied. Our ancestors survived ice ages, droughts, and all kinds of disasters. They passed down this knowledge to us. As the day went on, Jake noticed something interesting. The aliens were fascinated, but also frustrated. They wanted to learn, but their soft hands and careful nature made the work difficult. This is harder than it looks, one alien said, struggling to tie a simple knot. It takes practice, Jake said. I've been doing this since I was a child. Did your parents teach you? Yira 7 asked. My grandfather, Jake said. He was a tough, old man who believed everyone should know how to survive on their own. He took me camping every summer, taught me to hunt and fish and make fire. The aliens listened carefully. Jake could see they were trying to understand this concept of passing down practical knowledge through generations. We learn from data files, Veshtek said. All our knowledge is stored in our computer systems. What if the computers stop working? Jake asked. They will not stop working, Veshtek replied, but he sounded less certain than before. As the sun set, Jake showed them how to keep a fire going through the night. The aliens sat around the flames, watching the light dance. They seemed hypnotized by something so simple and primitive. This is very relaxing, Yira 7 said. Fire has always been important to humans, Jake said. It brings people together, makes them feel safe. That night, Jake returned to his perfect room in the colony. But he could not stop thinking about his students. They were intelligent and curious, but they seemed helpless without their technology. He wondered what would happen if their advanced systems ever failed. Would they be able to survive? Did they even remember how their ancestors had lived before? All this technology? Jake looked out his window at the perfect colony. Everything was clean and organized and safe. But for the first time, he wondered if safety could be its own kind of danger. He thought about his grandfather's words. A man who can't take care of himself isn't really free. Jake had always believed that. Now he wondered if the same thing might be true for entire civilizations. Tomorrow he would teach them more. Maybe they would begin to understand why these simple skills mattered. Maybe they would see that true strength came not from perfect technology, but from the ability to adapt and survive no matter what happened. The fire he had built that day was probably still burning outside the colony. Jake smiled, thinking about the aliens sitting around it, learning. Something their ancestors had once known, but they had forgotten. It was just the beginning. Jake woke up to alarms blaring through the colony. Red lights flashed in his room, and the normal soft hum of the building's systems had gone quiet. He jumped out of bed and grabbed his clothes. The hallway was full of confused Carolites. They stood in groups, talking in worried voices. Their large eyes looked frightened in the emergency lighting. "What's happening?" Jake asked Yira 7 as she hurried past. "The computers are down," she said. "All of them. The climate control, the food systems, everything." Zeth Prime appeared at the end of the hall. "There has been a solar storm," he announced. "A very large one. It has damaged our power grid and computer networks." Jake felt his stomach drop. "How long until you can fix it?" "We do not know," Seth Prime replied. "This has never happened before. Our engineers are working on it, but they estimate it could take weeks." Around them, the Carolites began to panic. Some were crying. Others stood, frozen, not knowing what to do. Jake realized these people had never faced a real crisis before. "Everyone stay calm," Jake said loudly. "We can handle this." "Handle this?" Veshtek said. "Our food replicators are dead. Our climate control is offline. The temperature outside is already dropping." Jake looked around at the frightened aliens. Then he thought about his grandfather's voice. "When things go wrong, that's when you find out who you really are." "Listen to me," Jake said. "I need everyone to gather in the main hall. Bring any tools you have, any supplies, anything that might be useful." "What are you going to do?" Yira 7 asked. "I'm going to teach you how to survive," Jake replied. An hour later, Jake stood before hundreds of Carolites in the main hall. They looked at him with hope and fear. Without their technology, they seemed lost and helpless. "The first thing we need is warmth," Jake said. "The climate control is down, so we need to make fires." "But we are inside the colony," one alien said. "We cannot make fires here." "We'll make them outside," Jake replied. "And we'll build shelters to stay warm." Jake organized the colony into groups. He sent some aliens to gather wood and dry materials for fires. Others went to find anything that could be used for shelter. He taught them to look for metal sheets, cloth, rope, anything useful. The Carolites struggled with the work. Their soft hands got cut by rough materials. They were not used to physical labor, but Jake pushed them to keep going. "I know this is hard," he said, "but your lives depend on it." Yira 7 worked beside him, learning quickly. She helped translate Jake's instructions to other aliens who were too scared to understand. "My hands hurt," she said, looking at her scratched fingers. "That means you're learning," Jake replied. "Pain teaches us things comfort never can." By evening, they had several fires burning outside the colony. Jake showed them how to build windbreaks around the fires using salvaged materials. The aliens huddled around the flames, grateful for the warmth. "What about food?" Zeth Prime asked. Jake had been thinking about this problem. The Carolites were vegetarians, but their food systems were completely dead. They had no way to process the plants they normally ate. "We'll have to forage," Jake said. "Find plants we can eat raw or learn to cook them over the fires." The next few days were the hardest in the colony's history. Jake taught them to identify edible plants in the area. He showed them how to cook roots and vegetables over open fires. The food was simple and often tasted bad, but it kept them alive. Some aliens got sick from the unfamiliar diet. Others were injured while gathering wood or building shelters. Jake treated their wounds with basic first aid, another skill they had never needed before. "This is terrible," one alien said. "We are not meant to live like this." "Your ancestors did," Jake replied. "They survived for thousands of years without technology." "That was different," the alien said. "We have evolved beyond such things." "Have you?" Jake asked. "Or have you just forgotten how to be strong?" As the days passed, something began to change. The aliens who had been frightened and helpless started to work together. They learned to make fires without Jake's help. They found new sources of food. They improved their shelters. YIRA-7 became Jake's assistant, helping him teach the others. She was faster to learn than most, and she had a natural talent for problem solving. "You're getting good at this," Jake told her, as she successfully started a fire on her own. "I never knew I could do such things," she replied. "Before, I just pushed buttons, and the machines did everything." "How does it feel to do it yourself?" Jake asked. YIRA-7 thought for a moment. "Hard, but also satisfying. Like I am more than I was before." Jake smiled. She was beginning to understand. The crisis brought out both the best and worst in the Carolites. Some worked tirelessly to help their neighbors. Others complained and waited for someone else to solve their problems. Jake pushed the lazy ones harder, making them take responsibility for their own survival. "Why should I gather wood?" one alien asked. "That is work for others, because you need warmth to live," Jake replied. "And no one else is responsible for keeping you alive." This concept was foreign to the Carolites. They had lived in a society where everything was provided for them. The idea that they had to work for their own survival was shocking, but slowly they began to adapt. They learned to work with their hands. They developed calluses and muscles they had never had before. They started to think differently about problems, looking for practical solutions instead of technological ones. One night, as Jake sat by the fire with YIRA-7 and some other aliens, he realized something had changed in their eyes. They looked more alert, more alive. The soft, pampered expressions were gone, replaced by something harder and more confident. "Do you think we will survive this?" YIRA-7 asked. "You already are surviving it," Jake replied. "Look around. You're making fire, finding food, building shelter. You're doing everything humans have done for thousands of years." "But we are not human," another alien said. "No," Jake agreed, "but the will to survive is the same in every species. You just needed to remember how to use it." As he looked at the faces around the fire, Jake realized that his simple assignment had become something much more important. He was not just teaching survival skills. He was helping an entire civilization remember what it meant to be truly alive. The solar storm had taken away their technology, but it had given them something more valuable, the knowledge that they could survive anything if they had the courage to try. Jake thought about his grandfather again. The old man would have been proud to see these aliens learning to be strong. He would have understood that sometimes the best thing that can happen to comfortable people is a crisis that forces them to grow. The fire crackled in the darkness, and Jake smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time since the crisis began, he knew they would make it through. 3 weeks had passed since the solar storm. The colony looked very different now. Smoke rose from cooking fires scattered throughout the area. Rough shelters stood next to the smooth dome buildings. The Carolites had learned to live without their technology, but Jake could see they were still struggling. He found YIRA-7 sitting by herself near one of the fires, staring at her hands. They were rough now, marked with cuts and calluses from the hard work. "You seem troubled," Jake sighed, sitting beside her. I have been thinking, she replied. About what you said? About our ancestors. Jake waited for her to continue. We have history files in the library, Yura-7 said. Old records from before our great cities were built. I have been reading them. What did you find? Jake asked. Stories, she said quietly. Stories about Carolites who lived in the wild places, who built shelters from stone and wood, who knew which plants were safe to eat and which would kill you. Jake felt a chill of excitement. Your ancestors were survivors? More than that, Yura-7 said. They were great survivors. Better than we are now. Maybe better than humans. But we forgot. That evening, Yura-7 led Jake to the colony's library. The power was still down, but she had found an old backup system that worked on battery power. The glowing screen showed ancient Carolite texts. Look at this, she said, pointing to symbols on the screen. This is from 3,000 years ago. It tells about the Great Drought, when our people had to survive for 50 years without rain. Jake read the translated text. It described Carolites who could find water in the desert, who could live on insects and cactus fruit, who could travel for days without rest. These were not the soft, pampered people he had been teaching. They were tough, Jake said with admiration. Tougher than humans in some ways, Yura-7 agreed. We can go longer without food and water. Our bodies are stronger than they look, but we have forgotten how to use these gifts. They spent hours reading the old records. Jake learned that ancient Carolites had been skilled hunters, despite their modern vegetarian culture. They had fought off predators with simple weapons. They had survived disasters that would have destroyed other species. What happened? Jake asked. How did you forget all this? Progress, Yura-7 said with bitterness. We built better cities, better technology. Each generation needed fewer survival skills. Over time, we lost them completely. But the knowledge is still there, Jake said. In your files, in your genes. You just need to remember how to use it. The next day, Jake called a meeting of the colony's leaders. He brought the historical records and shared what he had learned. Your ancestors were incredible survivors, he told them. They had skills we can learn from. Con Elder, the oldest Carolite in the colony, listened carefully. His ancient eyes grew bright as Jake spoke. I remember, Con Elder said slowly. My grandmother told me stories about the time before the domes, before the machines. She said we were once strong. We can be strong again, Jake said. But we need to combine the old ways with what I've been teaching you. Jake began adapting his lessons to include Carolite ancestral knowledge. He learned that their bodies could process certain plants that would poison humans. They could see better in low light. They could go longer without sleep. Try this, Jake said, showing them an ancient water-finding technique from their own history. Your ancestors knew that certain insects always nest near water sources. The Carolites were amazed to discover abilities they never knew they had. Yura-7 found she could track animals by scent, a skill that had been dormant in her genes. Others discovered they could identify edible plants by taste alone. It is like waking up, one alien said, like remembering a dream. Jake combined human techniques with Carolite natural abilities. He showed them how to make tools that worked better for their hands. He taught them to hunt in ways that matched their natural instincts. The colony began to change in deeper ways. The Carolites started to stand straighter, walk with more confidence. They looked at challenges differently, not as problems to be solved by machines, but as tests of their own capabilities. We are becoming ourselves again, Yura-7 said one evening. The people we were meant to be. Veshtek, who had been one of the most reluctant students, now worked alongside Jake to develop new survival techniques. I understand now, he said. We became slaves to our own technology. Not slaves, Jake corrected. But you forgot that tools should serve people, not the other way around. As the weeks passed, the Carolites began to excel at survival in ways that surprised even Jake. They developed techniques he had never seen before. They found food sources he had missed. They built shelters that were both functional and beautiful. "You're getting better at this than I am," Jake told Yura 7 as she demonstrated a new fire-starting method. "We are remembering," she replied, "and you are teaching us to remember faster." The breakthrough came when Con Elder shared a story he had not told in decades. It was about a time when young Carolites had to pass survival tests before they could become adults. Each youth was taken to the wilderness alone, Con Elder said. They had to survive for 30 days with only basic tools. Those who succeeded were considered ready for adult responsibilities. "What happened to those who failed?" Jake asked. "They tried again," Con Elder said, "as many times as needed. We did not abandon our young. We made them strong." Jake realized that the Carolites had once had their own version of what humans called coming of age. They had understood that comfort and safety were not the same thing as strength. "We should bring back the old tests," Yura 7 said. "Not just for young people, but for all of us." The idea spread through the colony like wildfire. Adults who had never faced real challenges began to test themselves. They went into the wilderness for days at a time, relying only on their growing skills. Some failed and had to be rescued, but they learned from their failures and tried again. Each attempt made them stronger, more confident. Jake watched this transformation with amazement. The soft, helpless aliens he had met months ago were becoming something new. They were rediscovering their heritage while learning from human knowledge. "We are not the same people who were hit by the solar storm," Zeth Prime said. "We are stronger." "Now, you always had the strength," Jake replied. "You just needed to remember how to use it." One night, as Jake sat by the fire with his students, he realized something profound had happened. He had come to teach them about human survival. Instead, he had helped them rediscover their own lost heritage. The Carolites were not becoming more human. They were becoming more themselves. They were remembering what it meant to be truly alive, truly capable, truly free. And Jake had learned something too. Survival was not just about techniques and tools. It was about remembering who you really were, underneath all the comfort and safety and convenience. The fire crackled in the darkness, and Jake smiled. Tomorrow the colony's engineers thought they might restore some of the power systems. But Jake suspected that many of the Carolites would choose to keep their fires burning anyway. They had remembered something more valuable than any: technology, the knowledge that they could survive anything as long as they remembered who they truly were. The power came back on a Tuesday morning. Jake woke to the familiar hum of the colony's systems starting up. The air conditioning began working again. The food replicators came online. The perfect, comfortable world had returned, but something was different. Jake could hear voices outside his window. Carolites were still gathered around their fires, even though they no longer needed them for warmth. They were talking and laughing in ways he had never heard before. Jake dressed and went outside. The colony looked like a mixture of two worlds. The smooth, clean buildings stood next to rough shelters that the Carolites had built. Cooking fires burned beside automated food stations. YRA-7 was teaching a group of young Carolites how to make rope from plant fibers. She looked up when she saw Jake approaching. "The power is back," she said. "I noticed," Jake replied. "How does it feel?" "Strange," she said. "Good to have the convenience, but I do not want to give up what we have learned." Around the colony, Jake saw the same thing happening. The Carolites were using their restored technology, but they were not abandoning their new skills. They kept their fires burning. They continued to practice making tools. They still went on foraging trips, even though the food replicators were working. That afternoon, Zeth Prime called a colony meeting. Hundreds of Carolites gathered in the main hall, their faces different from the soft, pampered expressions Jake had first seen. They looked alert, confident, alive. "The crisis is over," Zeth Prime announced. "Our systems are restored. We can return to our normal lives." A voice from the crowd called out, "What if we do not want to return?" Others began to speak up. "The old way was weak," one said. "We were like children, helpless without our machines." "We want to stay strong," another added. "We want to remember who we really are." Jake watched from the back of the hall as the Carolites debated their future. Some wanted to go back to the comfortable life they had known. Others wanted to keep practicing survival skills. A few wanted to abandon technology completely. YRA-7 stood up. "I have a proposal," she said. "We should not choose between the old way and the new way. We should combine them." "What do you mean?" Zeth Prime asked. "We keep our technology," Yura-7 said. "But we also keep our skills. We teach our children both ways. We make sure we never forget again." The crowd murmured agreement. Jake felt proud of her wisdom. "We need help," Con Elder said. "We have remembered much, but we need someone to guide us. Someone who can help us balance the old and new." All eyes turned to Jake. He felt uncomfortable being the center of attention. "Teacher Jake," Zeth Prime said formally, "the Colony Council has discussed this. We have a request." Jake waited. "We want you to stay," Zeth Prime said. "Not for 6 months, but permanently. Help us build a new kind of society, one that is both advanced and strong. Stay?" Jake said, "But I have a life on Earth, a job, friends." "We know," Yura-7 said, "but look what you have done here. You have changed us, made us better. We need that guidance." Jake looked around the room. These aliens had become more than his students. They had become his friends, his community. He had watched them transform from helpless dependents into capable, confident beings. "I need time to think," Jake said. That evening, Jake walked through the colony alone. He saw Carolites practicing with bow and arrow beside a quantum computer lab. He saw children learning to make fire while their parents worked on advanced engineering projects. The two worlds were blending together. Captain Lisa Parker called him on the communication system. "I heard about the colony's request," she said. "What are you going to tell them?" "I don't know," Jake replied. "This wasn't supposed to happen. I was just supposed to teach some basic skills." "You did more than that," Lisa said. "You saved their civilization, made them stronger." "Did I?" Jake asked. "Or did I just help them remember what they already knew?" "Does it matter?" Lisa said. "The point is, you did something important here. Something that matters." Jake spent the night thinking about his choice. He could return to Earth, go back to his simple life in Montana. Or he could stay and help build something new. In the morning, he found Yura-7 sitting by one of the fires. She was working on a piece of metal with simple tools, shaping it into something useful. "What are you making?" Jake asked. "A knife," she said. "Like yours, but designed for Carolite hands." Jake sat beside her. "Yura-7, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy with the changes? Really happy?" She put down her tools and looked at him. "Before the crisis, I was not truly alive. I was just existing, letting machines do everything for me. Now I feel complete, like I am using all of myself, not just part." "Even though it's harder?" "Especially because it's harder," she replied. "Easy things do not make you grow. They make you weak." Jake nodded. He thought about his grandfather again, about the lessons learned in the Montana wilderness, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands, of solving problems with your own mind. I'll stay, he said quietly. Why? I-7's eyes went wide. Really? Really, Jake said. But I have conditions. That afternoon, Jake met with the colony council. I'll stay and help you, he told them. But we do this right. What do you mean? Zeth Prime asked. We create a real program, Jake said. Not just for your colony, but for other Kerolite worlds. We teach children both ways from the beginning. We make sure every adult knows basic survival skills. A permanent institution? Veshtek asked. Exactly, Jake said. And we share this with other species too. Humans can learn from your ancestral knowledge, just like you learned from ours. The council agreed immediately. Within days, plans were being made for the first interspecies survival academy. Jake would be the director, with Yura 7 as his assistant. Word spread quickly through space. Other colonies requested similar programs. Human settlements wanted to learn ancient Kerolite techniques. Even advanced species that had never faced hardship began to understand the value of survival skills. Captain Lisa Parker visited a month later. She found Jake teaching a mixed class of humans and Kerolites how to build shelters that could withstand both Earth storms and Kerolite heat waves. You look different, she told him that evening. How so? Jake asked. Happier, she said. Like you found something you didn't know you were looking for. Jake smiled. Maybe I did. 6 months later, the academy was training instructors who would carry the knowledge to dozens of worlds. The original colony had become a model for other communities. They used advanced technology when it was helpful, but they never forgot their ability to survive without it. Jake received a message from Earth. Other human colonies wanted him to help start similar programs. The idea was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Will you go? Yura 7 asked when he told her about the requests. Eventually, Jake said, but I'll always come back here. This is home now. He meant it. The colony had become more than a place where he worked. It was a community where he belonged, where his skills mattered, where he was helping to build something important. One evening, Jake sat by the fire with a mixed group of humans and Kerolites. They were sharing stories about their homeworlds, their ancestors, their dreams for the future. The fire crackled between them, connecting them across species and cultures. A young Kerolite asked Jake about his grandfather. Jake told the story of the old man who had taught him to survive in the Montana wilderness. He sounds wise, the young alien said. He was, Jake replied. He always said that a person who can't take care of themselves isn't really free. Is that why you stayed? Yura 7 asked. To help us become free? Jake thought about it. Maybe. Or maybe I stayed because you helped me become free too. The fire burned lower, but no one moved to leave. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear in the alien sky. Around them, the colony hummed with quiet activity. Advanced machines worked alongside people using simple tools. Old knowledge mixed with new discoveries. Jake touched his grandfather's knife, still hanging on his belt. The old man would have been proud to see this place, to know that his lessons had traveled across the galaxy to help another species remember their strength. The young Kerolite who had asked about Jake's grandfather spoke up again. Will you teach me to use a knife like that? Tomorrow, Jake said. But tonight, just enjoy the fire. The alien nodded and settled back to watch the flames. Jake smiled, thinking about all the tomorrows ahead. There would be new students to teach, new techniques to develop, new worlds to visit. But tonight, he was exactly where he belonged, around a simple fire, sharing knowledge and friendship with people who had become family. The technology hummed around them, useful but not essential. They had learned to be strong with it or without it. Jake had been sent to teach basic survival skills. Instead, he had found a new way of living, a way that honored both progress and tradition, both comfort and strength. The stars shone down on the colony, and Jake knew that his grandfather's legacy would continue to spread across the galaxy, carried by humans and aliens alike, who understood that true freedom came from the ability to survive anything life might bring. The fire burned on into the night, and Jake Morrison, teacher and student, was finally home.